So, hey everyone, welcome to Shana Speaks Wine. I am here. We're starting a new series called Telling Stories, and I'm here with Jess Landor, who is the wine reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle. Really excited to be doing this. Really excited that Jess agreed to join and to chat with me. We officially met back in November at Napolé at Press Restaurant, but I've been following her work for years and loved her writing. So when I reached out to her, I was thrilled that she said yes. So we're here today and we're going to just be talking about finding stories, how we tell stories, what we're looking for, what makes for a good story. And we're especially going to dig into Jess and her role just because as a freelancer, uh, I work very differently than she does. And so I'm really curious about what she's thinking about when she's looking for ideas and what that means in terms of meeting the publication's expectations. Um, what like how does she actually work? And one thing that really caught my eye is she posted on LinkedIn recently for a great story she did on Lodi, and she said, that she had like a year to work on this story, which to me is mind blowing because in freelancer world you're like turn, turn, turn. So, we're just gonna, kind of get into it. But thanks so much for joining.
Thank
Um,
you.
and if you guys are wondering why we're so giggly right now, it's because we were just talking about heated rivalry right before we joined with everybody. So you'll have to forgive us for a little bit.
Yeah.
um, God. Jess, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into wine writing, and just a little bit about your background there?
Yeah. I have a story that a handful of actual wine writers also have, kind of interestingly, where I started out as a sports reporter. So I'm from Boston, was raised a huge Boston sports fan. I hope no one jumps off of this just because of that. Um, And I was on the path to write for Sports Illustrated or ESPN. That was the goal. And unfortunately had been laid off at my current job of the Women's Professional Soccer League in Boston. And during my job hunt, there was a job at the Napa Valley Register for a sports reporter. And I had visited San Francisco, loved the Bay Area, thought, okay, this could be like a bridge to San Francisco. I think Napa's pretty close. I don't really like drink wine, but it's alcohol, and I was 22 at the time. So I ended up moving across the country to take that job, and as people do when they enter wine country, you just quickly fall into the industry and wine and all those things. So that's kind of what happened, and I pitched like one wine travel article to a publication that they accepted, and it just snowballed really quickly from there. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I get to like go visit places and travel and drink wine and go to these crazy dinners, and this sounds like way more fun than standing on the sideline at 11 p.m. freezing watching a football game. So
Do you see any? That's really interesting with sports. Do you see any parallels with wine writing and with sports? Was there anything that you were able to
um,
kind of take from that and pull into this?
I think just journalism in general. I went to journalism school, and there's definitely parallels just from like a reporting standpoint. I learned how to type like on my BlackBerry because I was typing articles before a deadline at halftime at the game. So, things like that I now use daily in my reporting. And there's definitely been crossovers with certain stories. So that's been really fun, is like every once in a while. I'm actually can't say what it is, but I have an interview tomorrow with a big sports wine crossover that I'm excited about. So it's fun that I still get to do like a little bit of that world sometimes.
That is really fun. See the
Yeah.
crossover with that. When you're thinking about stories, what captures your attention? Like what makes that little light bulb go, "Oh, this could be something."
Yeah. I mean, we're mostly looking for stories that haven't either been told at all or haven't been told much or recently. And so I'm always just looking for things that are like, oh, I haven't heard about like a winemaker doing that kind of technique before using this type of equipment, or like, oh, what an interesting little nugget of history. Like I'm kind of like just keeping my eyes open for these like little nuggets.
Okay.
Like for example, there was a story I did last year on Canard Vineyards in Napa Valley, and I was talking to them just about their history, and then they were telling me this story about how when they bought the vineyard, they had these old Zinfandel vines on it, and the like Robert Mondavi called them up and was like, "You can't rip those vines out." And I was like, "Wait, what? Like, you got a call from Robert Mondavi himself, like, pleading that you save this vineyard?" And, that in my head was like, "Oh, that's a great thing to build a story off of." That's such, like, a fun little nugget that I've never heard before, and I'm sure most of our readers have not heard before. So I'm kind of looking for those fun little things that I feel like I can build an interesting, like, fascinating story around, that will stand out to other people as well.
I like that. So there's that kind of aha, sort of little surprise thing.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you find your brain particularly sparking on, like, when you're in these things? Is there anything that you just are like, you find it, like, continually over and over, you're like, "Oh, I'm so interested in this," or, like, something in the
Yeah. I think a lot of times it is these little, like, history things or, like, stories from the past that are just, like, really cool. I did a story recently on this tasting society in Sebastopol where this, longtime wine vet, like, has this crazy cellar, and he brings these young 20, 30 somethings over once a month, and they, like, raid his cellar and do this blind tasting, and he's helping these, like, youngins get exposed to these wines that they could never afford or access today. And just talk like, when I heard that, like, part of the story, I was like, "Oh my god, that's incredible." Like, there's no mentorship like that these days, hardly ever in the industry, and it's like what we used to hear about from the old timers telling us that's what it used to be. And so a lot of times it's stuff that's related to people and personalities that make me the most excited. Like, I wanna talk to these people and, like, tell their story and paint this picture of, like, who they are and what's, like, so cool about what they're doing.
That's really interesting because I think with the people and personalities, I think is something that draws all of us, especially
Mhm.
writers, to the wine industry, and we get really excited about. As a freelancer, like, I don't get a lot of opportunities to do
Yeah.
profiles. Like, my publications
Mhm.
is just not something I can do. But are you able to do a lot of profiles? Like, and what does
Yeah.
that feel like for you to do a profile versus
Oh,
like a friend?
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my one of my favorite things to write. I think it is a skill of mine, and, I've gotten to do some amazing ones. I mean, I did one on, Bill Foley a few years ago, and I was like, "I don't know anything about this guy. Nobody has really written about him from a wine perspective. He has this, like, empire, and no one really knows anything about him." And I was able to get this interview and this FaceTime and really dig in, and, that to me is my favorite. I love profile writing. I love taking someone's story and trying to, like, capture who they are, um, in a truthful way. Yeah, I really do love doing those. The best part is that you get to spend, hopefully, for a profile, like, significant time with that person, and it might be several interviews, several meetings, shadowing them for a while, if you can get that access, and that does take a lot of time, and it's even hard for me to find that time because we are writing a ton all the time. There's always news that we're covering, and so I'm having to, like, schedule out time to meet with these people for this profile, but, um it's always worth the effort, and it's an effort I could not have afforded when I was freelancing. The pay alone for the article did not make sense for us to do that, but, now I'm doing this on my company time, like, I'm getting paid to work these hours no matter what, and so, it's a luxury for sure to get to do that kinda writing.
Take me through the process for stories like this or ideas that you have. Is there a pitch process that you're doing with editors, or like how do you get the green light on things, or do you have carte blanche and it's whatever you feel like doing?
Yeah, I think, Esther and I have a pretty, like, we know what our coverage scope is for the most part. There's always a few exceptions here or there, but I I know pretty immediately if, like, a story I want to do is gonna get greenlit. And, like, I've been at the Chronicle for 4 years now, and so, I also have a pretty good idea of a story that's not gonna get greenlit, when I'm receiving pitches and such. And then we do get editor approval. I have a weekly meeting with my editor, and we chat over story ideas. I would say it's very rarely I bring a story that gets denied, shut down, just because I kinda know what we're looking for and what our readers like, and I also think there's a trust in Esther and I as the wine reporters and wine experts to, um, that, like, if we're bringing a story to our editors and we think it's worthwhile, then, like, they trust us to do it. And we're allowed to experiment if it's, like, not something we've done really before, we don't know how it's gonna do, or let's say last time we wrote about that topic, it didn't do well. That doesn't mean we're not gonna try again if we think we found a new interesting angle. So there's a lot of support there and flexibility, which, means we get to do a lot of the stories we wanna do.
That's really cool. That must feel
Yeah,
really
it
gratifying.
it is, yeah.
And you started to say something that I think, again, very different from how I work, and I think is really interesting for a lot of people. How are you balancing some of these, more shorter, timely news stories with some of
Mhm.
these longer, more in depth things? Like, how are you prioritizing that, or what does that look like in your day?
Yeah. I mean, day to day, like, the everyday news is my number one priority, so there are plenty of days where I have this whole schedule and breaking news drops, and I drop everything. Um, it's most difficult when I'm scheduled, like, off sites, so, like, for example, on Thursday, I'm heading to Alexander Valley, which is pretty good drive from my house. I'm gonna be gone, like, most of the day doing that, and so that's a situation where luckily if breaking news comes through, hopefully Esther can take that for me, or someone else, like, if we really need it covered, but yeah, these nice features and profiles generally are things that we just have to schedule time for, and they often will get pushed if, like, more important or timely stories come through, but luckily, a lot of times, those stories don't have a, like, super timely thing to it where, like, it has to come out by this date. Every once in a while, that's true. So we just there's always tweaking with the schedule or just moving things around and, yeah, keeping in communication with your editors.
Do you like that fast breaking pace, or like, what's your like? Are you more inclined to be like a longer, deeper research, or do you like that fast pace? Like, what's your natural inclination?
Um, I like both. The Chronicle was definitely, like, it was a learning curve to I mean, we can turn things around, like, very, very like, sometimes, 20-minute type turnaround to be the first to get these things up, so, um, there is an adrenaline rush with breaking news and, like, getting it up there and trying to beat other people, and, quite frankly, a lot of those stories are things that, like, move the needle the most for us with our, like, performance goals, so there's this, like, competitiveness to it that, as a former athlete, I really enjoy, I would say. Like, to the point where I've often gotten scoops and just decided I'm going to write this at night after hours because if I wake up tomorrow morning and someone else got it, I'm gonna be pissed. Um, but the features, like, in terms of writing and, like, that fulfillment as a writer, the longer form, like, pieces is, like, what brings me that, like, joy and fulfillment and getting to take your time and really have it be a story that people enjoy reading versus getting really important information maybe out of.
Got it. So one thing that, we're always, as freelance, we're thinking so much about the publication's audience. Like, we're obviously writing it for their particular
Yeah.
audience. When you're looking at stories and you're thinking about stories, how much of it is your personal interests versus what you think the audience is going to want to learn about? Like you said, like some things like they didn't perform well, but you
Mhm.
still pursue them. So what does that balance look like?
I would say it's 90, like, 8% audience. Like, I think that is my job is, I am a news reporter at the Chronicle, which is a general interest newspaper that serves the Bay Area. So, like, everything we do we think this is gonna be of interest to them? Is a lot of our readers are industry, so we do a lot of stories that maybe, people within the wine industry would be interested in. Is it gonna be useful to them? A lot of times it is a story where I am maybe projecting and saying, "I think our readers would enjoy learning about Lodi," maybe that. But that's based on data we have that says, like, our readers like to learn about new regions, they like affordability and accessibility, and so, therefore, I think they will like to learn about Lodi, like those types of things. So they're always in mind, and that is what separates us from most wine publications, I think. Not that those publications aren't thinking about their audience, but we have a very different audience than they do, and that yes, a lot of the people reading us are like these wine enthusiasts and collectors and nerds, and they want to learn about wine. But we have a lot of people that are just people living in the Bay Area that maybe took a trip to Napa once or twice and they're just starting. And so A lot of our coverage is really based around just trying to serve everyone, all types of wine drinkers or, newbies, especially, I think. I take like greater responsibility to informing people that are maybe just getting into wine because I think we have the ability to do that with like being a general newspaper.
That must be really hard though, because you're talking to what feels kind of like two
Mhm.
separate audiences, but you have to bring it together. Like, how do you manage that in your writing? How do you
I
kind
mean,
of
I
find the middle ground?
Yeah, I try not to overthink it, I would say. I think a lot of our articles are very clearly meant for certain subsets of that audience. So, like, a lot of the stuff about the industry's challenges are definitely probably mostly read by our industry readers. Then let's say, here's a new wine region to visit, or, I think just naturally there's not maybe a ton of crossover. I'm sure there is always crossover, but I think we just stick to our style, and I the main thing would be not to alienate people. So a lot of our articles that maybe industry would be reading will still and our editors, really make sure we're like explaining terms and like terminology that might not our novice readers might not understand. And for us, it's a little bit like, ugh, like everyone reading this like knows what carbonic maceration is. But I think it's really smart and that they make us be inclusive that way. Because and I think that's just like what the lesson of the wine industry is like, we can't just assume that everyone understands these scientific chemistry terms, and like that's what is turning people off. So taking the time to add like a little sentence or a few words to explain and a link to another article, I think is worthwhile in the end, and that is how we just kind of try to appeal to everyone, I would say.
I think that's a great point about making sure that we're sounding inclusive and making sure that it's something that's being understood by
Mhm.
everybody. I know that sometimes we say that we have like the phrase "speak to the lowest common denominator," so like get as
Yeah.
basic as humanly possible.
Mhm.
And it's always a weird thing because you don't wanna come off as condescending to people who know what they're doing, but at the same time, you know what? Everyone could use a little refresher, and if you know it, then you know it, and you just move it
Yes.
along until you get the next piece of information that actually makes
Mhm.
sense or that you need to know.
Yeah, and I think we're really lucky to have editors that maybe aren't wine experts because they really do keep us in check. Like, if they
Mhm.
don't know what this term is, a lot of our readers probably don't know. And I think because Esther and I are so in this, it's really easy to get in your bubble and think, who doesn't know what that is? It's so
Yeah.
common. But also, like, we're hanging out with wine people all the time, and like, yeah, they all know what it is. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been nice to kinda have that balance. I don't know if every wine publication would have that because you'd assume the editors would be just as, if not more, into that world.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, the writers.
And something else I've been wondering about is the idea of voice. And this is kind of ties in a little bit with audience, but I think as I've been working on Substack and writing Substack, I'm really trying to, I guess, rediscover my voice is a good way to put it, just because I've always been writing for publications. And so there's
Mhm.
a style guidelines that you're always trying to meet when you're doing that. But you obviously been talking so much about your passion for writing, and especially when you're doing profiles and things that you're really passionate about. How much do you feel your voice is being seen in these articles versus like the voice of the chronicle?
I would say that in like, the profiles and the more, like, narrative kind of featurey stuff I do, I would say my voice is very much there. You get a little more flexibility to kinda use your tone and, just, like, for me, I feel like I really try to have this more, like, approachable, casual, way of talking and little lighthearted when appropriate, maybe even like humor when appropriate. There's certain times sometimes I get to like take over Esther's newsletter when she's out of town, and that like format allows me to be a little like cheekier and more like who I am in real life. And then yeah, when we're doing hard news, breaking news stories, like there's definitely more of a style and a like straightforwardness, and you're not gonna like wax poetic about anything or even like you're just straightforward. It's like, this is the news and this is why it matters, and like, here you go. And it was a little bit, again, like a learning curve when I joined the Chronicle, because when I was freelancing, there wasn't a lot of policing over my voice, I would say. Um, But we have our a style at the Chronicle, and it took me a bit to figure out what that was. And then I've had a few editors, and every time you get a new editor, there's they have styles and ways that they like things done. So it's shifted, here and there. But yeah, I think the bigger, longer form pieces hopefully are still pretty much me. Yeah.
And something else, because you're so specialized in California, that is your
Mhm.
focus area. And I'm what I call a generalist. So I'm kind of just all over the place. I write about wherever, whatever keeps my attention. But tell me a little bit what it's like when you're very focused on a particular place. Do you find what's that like in terms of finding inspiration too? Is like, do you ever get bored with it? Or is it like it just gives you like, or you just, it's like a rabbit hole you can just keep going down? Like, tell me more about being a specialist.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason went down this specialist path was actually on the advice of Amy Wozlacki at Decanter, the editor there. I met her at the Wine Writers Symposium years ago. And at the time, I was doing a lot of like what you're doing. I was traveling the world and visiting different regions for like a few days at a time, and then coming back and trying to pitch a story. And, um, I loved getting to discover all these places. I was like hot off a trip to Brazil, and I was talking to Amy about all this stuff. And she was like, no, 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 no. She said, I'm never gonna hire a writer that has been to write a piece for me that has been to, like, a wine region once. And she's like, "You live in Napa, your boots on the ground, like, you need to become, like, the Napa expert. You need to be, like, the person people think of when they're hiring a writer to write a piece on Napa." And for me, I was kinda, like, disappointed because I was like, "Well, that's kinda boring, like, I live here." Um but, I think she was right, and I took that to heart, and a couple of years later when I got hired at the Chronicle, I think my being like, living here and my expertise and my knowledge of this area is, like, a big reason I hopefully got the job, and I've been able to show since then that I can get us stories that no one else or before anyone else because I'm here and I hearing what people are talking about at the Rutherford Grill, like, at the bar, and, I was at a, New Year's Day party a couple weeks ago, and I was sitting on the couch, and I hear some friends off in the corner and I hear X, "Oh, that winery sold." And I was like, "What?" And then they're like, off the record," Uh, so, yeah, so, like, I think I'm very lucky to live not there's not many wine regions in the US that you can live in and convince publications to pay you to write about them with regularity, I think. And me living here is I'm able to do that because it's Napa and it is the most important, arguably wine region in North America. And um I like being an expert. I like that I hopefully can create people to trust me. And, I have so much context and history in my back pocket that you can only get I mean, I've been here 15 years now and I still don't know everything. There are still people, I get emails from people after a story being like, well, in 1980, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. No one told me that. But it is really fun. I do get a little bored in the sense of I personally, and you mentioned like how much does your like personal interests matter. I want to discover other regions. I want to travel and try different grapes and wines, and it's obviously a lot of Cabernet and Bordeaux here. And the Chronicles let me slowly do that, but it's a process. I'm not going to even probably Oregon anytime soon for that. So, um, but there's no shortage of stories either, especially out here. So I'm never
and
like like out of ideas. It's just more like, okay, I want to like explore something different sometimes.
and what are some of these travels? Like, where have you started to, I guess, ease into?
Yeah, I did like a couple years ago. I pushed for this big package we did on Anderson Valley, which is like a place that I've been visiting for years and really just love. I love the people and the wineries and the wine and the scenery. And so we did this like 8-story package on the Rhine region, and it was really, really well received. So that was kind of a encouragement of, okay, our readers maybe do care beyond the Bay Area a little bit. I've done a decent amount on Paso, and then Lodi was like the big experiment of last year. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we'll see. But we're pretty much like at this point, it's like I'm trying to push in California, and then we'll see from there.
Um, one thing you said that I think is really interesting is because, you've been living in Napa for 15 years and you're obviously
Mhm.
so tied into the community. Is there any sort of, I don't want to use the word tension because that's not the word that I'm looking for, but you're writing about people that you also live around and live with, and it's a small, I mean, it's a tight knit community. So
Right.
what does that feel like? I mean, is it, if you're, I guess, what are you like? How are you balancing that when you're feeling something that
Yeah.
could be private or it could be something you're not excited about, but you know that it's going to get heard and reverberating throughout the community?
Yeah, it's tough. That's the hardest part of my job is, like, I live in this community and I care a lot about it, and my job is to report the news, and the news is not always positive or, and sometimes it impacts people that I know or friends and family of people that I know, and that, when I got hired, or before I got hired, I had some tough conversations with the editors about what hypothetical situations and like what that might look like, because above all, like I have to maintain my integrity. And it can be challenging, and I know that, with the industry's challenges lately, unfortunately, a lot of the news we've been reporting is not, what everyone likes to hear, and that not everyone is happy with that, but we all you just try to focus on the positive feedback and hope that people can understand, like, I'm doing my job, and at the end of the day, my job is tied to this industry as much as theirs, and so I definitely don't wanna see it, going away or faltering. I don't take enjoyment out of it, so, yeah, it's just you just, um, do your job and hope that people understand, and the people that are close to you that get it will stick around, and if others don't, then that's life.
Have you dealt with any hard knocks? Have you ever had, do you like, are you sitting there and
Yeah.
eating and people are like coming at you?
Yeah, I've had, some people have, like, said things where I hear, I have people tell me, "Oh, I was, in this meeting and your name came up and here's what people were saying about you." There's a lot of that, but, think being a journalist is about having tough skin. I didn't really think you would need such tough skin in wine writing, when I first entered this world, but, I think that if you're getting people talking, especially as a news reporter, you're doing your job, so,
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah.
We always say don't read the comments, like
Yeah,
like
I don't
but
read the
you
comments.
probably.
Yeah. Yeah, stay out of the comment section. My husband likes to go in it, and I'm like, "I don't wanna."
Your boss. Oh
Yeah.
no. Kind of going back to, as you're branching out a little bit, exploring new regions, what is it looking like to go to a place like Lodi or Anderson Valley where you're not as familiar and you're starting to do your work? Like
Mhm,
what's the process for starting to find stories or figuring all that
mhm.
out?
Yeah, I try to find, like, pinpoint, and a lot of this is, like, tapping into my, like, my contacts in the wine community of people that I trust that might have ideas, but trying to find a handful of the right people to start talking to. Like leaders in that wine region or pioneers of that wine region or, even just like the head of the grower, wine associations in that region and, planning a visit. And I usually stack these visits like very, very busy. For Lodi, I was doing these day trips and, I'd have 4 appointments in a day. And just start talking to people and figuring out like, what is different? What are they doing that's exciting here? What is challenging or that other regions maybe aren't dealing with that they're dealing with here? What's holding it back if it's not this like because I'm definitely seeking regions that don't have this like prestige yet of Napa. Um, and what's working, what's not, and then from there and then asking like who should I talk to for this? And it is this process. And when I took on Lodi this year, I didn't feel comfortable doing one trip and then writing a bunch of stories. Like, that didn't feel authentic. I wanted to be a trustworthy authority on it, and I know even, like, a handful of visits in one year does not make me an expert, but I wanted to make sure that whatever I wrote, the people there weren't going to read it and be like, what is she talking about? Like, she's no idea what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really important that I put in the time and talked to a lot of people and visit a lot of wineries, and was just able to really dive in. But I enjoyed it so much because I'm learning, and I had my ideas of what Lodi was, and I knew that a lot of it was just like stigmas that were around for a long time, and there was probably more to it. And it's so much fun to like uncover all these like gems and stories and people that no one else has written about as much, and then like
Mm-hmm.
in turn help our readers discover them. And in my experience of going to these other regions, everyone is just so grateful and excited to have people there interested in paying attention, that it's a really like great experience.
How helpful or unhelpful is it, do you think, to when you're going to a region like that to use Napa as a lens? Because obviously the readers have grown up with you and,
Mhm.
reading about Napa, reading about Sonoma, something like that. Like,
Yep.
is it helpful? Does it not work for that region? And like, just how does that work for storytelling?
I think that, most of the regions would not would prefer to just leave Napa out of it. However,
Mm,
I think it is almost 100% of the time important as a lens. I think when you are the, like, most successful region in a country or in a large area, everything you do is gonna be like, everything everyone does is gonna compare to what you do. Everyone's looking to you to see what they should be doing next or what they can be doing better, or maybe even what they don't wanna do, how they wanna be different. Um, and also at the same time, like, our readers are so familiar with Napa as well that, like, it's just great context for them. So I can say, like, "This is how Napa is, and this is how it is here." And neither is good or bad or better, but you can now make a decision to say, "This is the one I wanna visit," or "This
mhm.
one sounds like my type of vibe." So it comes and some people might not like that, but I just think that it's just such an obvious thing to use, as a tool when writing about these regions that people don't know about. How does it compare and differ from the one that you do?
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to like kind of changing gears, but like, what's your like nuts and bolts? Like, how are you actually like physically doing work? Like, what
Yeah.
tools work for you? Like, I'm always just curious how other writers work.
I mean, I'm not super techy with my stuff. I type most of my interviews and notes on Google Docs. A lot of it, and if I'm, either on my laptop while I'm on a call or on my phone while I'm out in an interview, I would prefer to skip the step of transcribing because it's like one extra thing you have to do. And then for like longer form, like those profiles and stuff, when I want to be like really locked in and it's going to be an hour plus interview, I'll record. And then like I was using Otter a lot, though I'm hearing you can use ChatGPT now as a pretty good transcription service for free. So
Oh.
I might try that. But yeah, it's a lot of, Google Docs is, like, probably my best friend, and we write our stories in Google Docs and edit in Google Docs. And then there's a bunch of, platforms that we have to use on the back end to get our stories up, so that's enough, technology
Got it. Got
process
it.
for doing yeah.
Because I think about that when I'm on wine trips and I see how all of us are just doing something completely different. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Otter, but I need to also be writing
Mhm.
something at the same time because it jogs my
Yeah.
memory of like where this
That's
was, or I could take note and be like, oh, at 20 minutes into our conversation, we talked
mhm.
about blah blah blah, like that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Esther actually, I've noticed, like, often has a notebook where she's handwriting notes, and my handwriting is not trustworthy enough to do that anymore. So I think it's awesome that she does that. But yeah, and I've spent a lot of time even out with like our food critics and stuff, and I am fascinated how they will be at a restaurant and take no notes, and it is all in their head and in their taste buds, and I could never
Yeah.
ever do that.
No, I would
So
never be like,
yeah.
what was that thing? That thing with it? No, absolutely
Like,
not.
I didn't even remember what it was, like, what fancy dish it was. So I that to me is, and I part of that is probably them trying to, like, stay under the radar, but it's like a crazy skill that I don't possess.
Yeah. Um, Something else. We're talking about the wine industry in general and kind of, we're facing some, everyone uses the term headwinds, the truth. But what are you seeing for wine media, especially? Like, how are you viewing our industry or our subset of the industry, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been pretty heartbreaking to watch. I feel like the last few years we've just seen a lot of publications shut down or shrink. And I think even though there's probably more wine writers than ever, I keep reading that, especially with the availability to do Substack and podcasts and all these different media and have your own independent platforms. In terms of like the more traditional wine media, there's just not a lot left. And I also feel like it's missing a little like innovation. I like Full Pour. What they're doing there, I think, is so fun and necessary and different. And we need more like opportunities and ideas like that that are going to just as much as wine needs to lose a little bit of this like traditional aspect and just be a little more playful and fun and innovative. I think wine media needs to go with that. And yeah, I'm just like looking forward to who's going to come up with the next cool wine mag.
And you say innovative, are you thinking, is it more of like a tone thing? Is it a subject matter thing? How would you describe innovative?
I feel like it could be the medium and like it could be design and using fun, bold colors and graphics and stuff like that. Or it could be, adapting all these other mediums that we have. It could be, for me, a lot of it would be like less scores, less tasting notes. I think there's a lot of that, and I don't think that is what is bringing in new wine consumers. So I think storytelling should be the heart of innovation in wine media.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, wine criticism, I think, is becoming again just a very big
Yeah,
topic nowadays. Like, what's its role? But to me, it's always just been like, well, whose palate do you trust? I mean, everyone has like a different palate. Like, someone could be like, this is the best
yeah,
cheeseburger in the world, and someone else is like, no, this is
mhm,
terrible. But I mean, and it's the same with wine. It's like, if
yeah.
you don't like the palate, then what does that score actually mean?
Well, and think about like entering wine and being like, "Hi, I wanna like start like trying new things and collecting and figuring out what I like." And then it's like, here's 30 wine critics, pick one. Like, that's really overwhelming, right? Like, we need some sort of guide that's like, if you like the taste of this, then here's the right critic for you, like that kind of thing.
Like a matchmaking service.
Yeah. So I think it's just, I think eventually this might not, I don't think it's the future, maybe. I think there's a place for it. I
Mhm.
had a conversation, I was at the Chronicle Wine Comp last week, and we were with some of our marketing team at the Chronicle, and some of them were asking me questions, and we're talking about, they're like, "Oh, like this wine, it's 94 points." And in their mind, that is like an A. And I had to explain like, "Well, actually, the scale starts here, so that might not be what you think it is." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And, most consumers don't realize that, and they see a 90 something and they're like, "Oh, automatically I'm gonna probably love this wine. This is a great wine." And it's almost like this marketing like scheme. It is a
Yeah.
marketing scheme. And so, yeah, I just think, and we can talk about that for like 2 hours probably,
Oh, I
but,
know. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
but in wine media, I think I think storytelling, and it's the same thing that all the experts tell the wine industry, like, you need to focus on storytelling in your story, and your story is not just, you make Cabernet from this really, prominent vineyard and you hired this really prominent winemaker, like, that's not a story, I think there's
Yeah.
gotta be more to it, so
Yeah, I agree. I think we may have to do a part 2 and just, like, talk about this more because I think we both have a lot of thoughts.
yeah.
Um, what's an article that you're most proud of? Like, looking back at your career at the Chronicle, what's a piece that you are like, "This?"
Yeah, I don't I was trying to think about that. I can't say there's, like, one that, like, pops up as, like, the pinnacle of my career so far, but I think every year there's, like, a few that I am most proud of, like, from that year. I think one of my favorites was, like, 2 years ago, I followed, 2 couples that were opening a tasting room together, in Napa and followed them from like when they got into the space and they were like doing all the logistics with the city and the paperwork and the permitting and building the space out up until opening day. And I was able to like again spend this like time with them and sit in on their meetings with their kids running around and just get all this like really amazing like scene setting that I could then use in the story to talk about what it takes to open a tasting room when you're like a very small family run brand. And I think it was just like really enjoyable, but then like being able to write that piece with all these like again these scenes that I had witnessed and really try to capture like what those months were like was just really fun for me. So I think often the pieces I'm most proud of are the ones that like I enjoyed doing the most or that took like a lot of long effort and work. But sometimes it's also, you know, an investigative piece that was just really, really hard and challenging and talking to people about a sensitive subject and struggling to get people on the record to talk about it. And, you know, those are really rewarding when they finally do come through. And yeah, I don't know. There's so many. I was trying to think about it. I'm like, I've probably written, I don't know, 350 or more articles in 4 years. So like you just forget
Yeah.
so many of them.
But then you look back and yeah, it's, oh, this one was great. Or you just had this whole
Yeah,
library of things. I get that.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. Before we go, one more very important question. What's
hmm
your favorite snack to nibble on while you're writing or working?
Mm, probably cheese. Cheese is just my favorite snack in general. And it's you know, high in protein, so What about you? What's yours? I wanna know.
My favorite snack? Oh god. I love cottage cheese. I really do. And I feel like I've been like way on the cottage cheese train before like all the protein heads got onto it.
Mhm. Are
So I
you
think that's like honestly my favorite snack.
are you a good culture junkie like I am?
No, there's one called
Oh.
Friendship, and I think that they're East Coast based. And I know I've just been
Oh,
eating them for years. I tried Good Culture, it was good, but you know, like when you have a brand, you're just like brand loyal. Like that's my Friendship cottage cheese to me.
okay. Yeah, I'm a good culture junkie for sure out here, but I have to go to Whole Foods and buy like 6 at once because they
Oh yeah.
are out constantly.
Yeah. Jess, thank you so, so much for this. I love doing this with
Yeah,
you.
it was so fun.
Great insights. This is awesome. For everyone who joined, thank you so much. If you liked what you heard today, please consider subscribing to the Shayna Speaks Wine Substack. We're going to be doing more of these hopefully in the future. We may have Jess back on for a part two, but there's lots of great stuff that I have planned for this year. And I just hope that you'll join me for it. So thanks again. And Jess, hope to see you really soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.